Picture this, a tiny speck of land in the vast Pacific Ocean, one of the most remote places on Earth, Easter Island. Known for its towering stone statues, the Moai, this island holds another, even deeper mystery. Carved into wooden tablets, a strange and beautiful script known as Rongorongo has baffled scholars for over a century. No one knows who created it, what it says, or even how it suddenly appeared on an island with no known history of writing. It's one of the few undeciphered scripts left in the world, a linguistic puzzle wrapped in an enigma waiting to be solved. What makes Rongorongo so extraordinary isn't just its cryptic symbols, it's the sheer improbability of its existence. Easter Island was isolated for centuries, cut off from the rest of Polynesia and the world. Yet, seemingly out of nowhere, this intricate writing system emerged. Was it an independent invention, a stroke of genius by the island's people, or does it hint at a lost connection to the outside world, a secret chapter of history we've yet to uncover? The theories range from the plausible to the downright fantastical, with some even suggesting extraterrestrial influence. One thing's for sure, the truth behind Rongorongo is as elusive as the island's own shadow. This isn't just a story about symbols on wood. It's a saga of human curiosity, of an entire civilization's voice locked away in undeciphered strokes. If we could crack this code, what forgotten stories would we hear? Tales of kings and voyages, myths of gods and disasters, or something even stranger? The hunt for answers has led scholars down twisting paths, from early European explorers who first recorded the script to modern-day linguists armed with cutting-edge technology. Yet Rongorongo guards its secrets fiercely. So let's unravel this mystery together, piece by piece, clue by clue, and step into one of history's most captivating unsolved puzzles. When European missionaries first arrived on Easter Island in the 1860s, they expected to find a people untouched by the written word, a culture rooted in oral tradition like so many others across the Pacific. But what they discovered left them stunned. Scattered across the island were wooden tablets covered in strange, flowing symbols, carved with precision into the dark surfaces. These were the Rongorongo tablets, and their existence defied everything outsiders thought they knew about this isolated corner of the world. At first, the missionaries assumed the script must have been introduced by foreign visitors, perhaps Spanish or Dutch explorers who had passed through centuries earlier. But the islanders insisted otherwise. This was their writing, passed down through generations. Some elders could even chant the texts aloud, their voices rising and falling in patterns that seemed to mirror the symbols' curves and angles. Yet when pressed to explain their meaning, the islanders grew hesitant. Many of the tablets had been destroyed or hidden after violent raids by slave traders decades earlier, and those who once understood the script had either been taken or had died without passing on their knowledge. The missionaries, eager to decode what they saw as a potential key to converting the island's people, sent sketches of the script back to Europe, hoping scholars could make sense of it. But confusion only deepened. The symbols didn't resemble any known writing system, not Polynesian petroglyphs, not the hieroglyphs of Egypt, not even the cryptic scripts of distant Asia. Some signs looked like birds or fish, others like abstract geometric shapes, all arranged in a peculiar, alternating pattern. Early researchers debated whether the script was truly writing or just elaborate decoration, a sacred art form never meant to be read. One theory suggested it might be a kind of mnemonic device, a visual aid for reciting myths or genealogies. Another claimed it was proto-writing, a bridge between symbols and full language. But the most tantalizing possibility, that Rongorongo was a fully developed script, a lost language waiting to be unlocked. The mystery only grew when linguists realized something extraordinary. The tablets seemed to be written in reverse boustrophedon, a method where lines alternate direction like an ox plowing a field. But instead of flipping the text, the carvers had flipped the symbols themselves, as if mirroring each line. This wasn't just rare, it was unheard of in any other writing system on Earth. Who would invent something so complex on an island with no prior tradition of writing? And why? The questions multiplied, but the answers remained as elusive as the island's own origins. Every theory led to more riddles, and the few islanders who still remembered fragments of the chants could offer no clear key. By the late 19th century, as outside interest in Rongorongo grew, so did tragedy. Many of the surviving tablets were taken from the island, sold to collectors or tucked away in museum vaults. Others simply vanished, lost to time or neglect. Today, only around 24 genuine Rongorongo artifacts remain, scattered across the world. Each one is a silent witness to a puzzle that may never be solved, a script born in isolation, flourishing in mystery, and fading into silence just as the modern world began to take notice. The Rongorongo tablets are as mysterious in their physical form as they are in their meaning. Carved from dark, polished wood, often from the native Toromiro tree or driftwood that had washed ashore, each tablet feels like a relic of both artistry and purpose. Most are roughly the size of a large book, some reaching up to 2 feet in length, with surfaces smoothed by time and hands long gone. The edges show careful craftsmanship, rounded and worn, suggesting these weren't just ceremonial objects but tools handled, studied, perhaps even cherished. But it's the surfaces that truly mesmerize. Row after row of glyphs march across the wood, each one carved with astonishing precision. Some symbols leap out immediately: a crouching bird with wings outstretched, a fish with scales etched in delicate lines, a human figure with arms raised as if in prayer. Others are more abstract, zigzags like ocean waves, spirals that might represent the sun or stars, patterns that hint at a language of shapes rather than pictures. The grooves catch the light, shadows pooling in the curves, making the symbols seem almost alive when touched by firelight or the island's golden sun. What's even more striking is how these glyphs dance across the tablets. Unlike most writing systems which move left to right or top to bottom, Rongorongo follows a bizarre but mesmerizing rhythm called reverse boustrophedon. Imagine a farmer plowing a field, turning at the end of each row to start the next in the opposite direction. Now picture that same motion, but with every other line of text flipped upside down. That's how Rongorongo unfolds, each line a mirror image of the one before it, the symbols themselves twisting to face the new direction. It's as if the carvers wanted the wood to sing, not just speak, the lines pulsing like the tide. This wasn't haphazard. The consistency across tablets suggests a deep understanding, a system so refined it defies the island's isolation. How could such complexity emerge without outside influence? And why choose a method so convoluted when simpler options existed? Some scholars argue the alternating lines held sacred meaning, mirroring the cyclical nature of life and death central to Rapa Nui beliefs. Others think it might have been practical, a way to fit more text into limited space. But perhaps the most haunting possibility is that we're missing something fundamental, a key that would make the reversal seem obvious, even necessary. Then there's the where. Certain tablets show grooves smoothed to near invisibility in places, as if fingers traced the same passages for generations. Were these teachings memorized, recited until the wood itself bore the marks of repetition? Or do the faded lines guard the most important messages, worn down by reverence? The tablets don't yield their secrets easily. Even the wood whispers ambiguity. Some pieces show signs of repair, patches where new sections were grafted in, as if the words were too precious to lose. Holding one of these tablets must have been like holding a living story. The weight of the wood, the coolness under fingertips, the way the glyphs seem to shift when viewed from different angles. It's no wonder early European observers doubted such sophistication could come from a people they dismissed as primitive. But that's the heart of the mystery. These weren't crude scratches or idle doodles. They were the work of masters, a writing system born from minds that saw the world in lines and curves, in birds and waves and stars. And somewhere, buried in those mirrored lines, lies a voice waiting to be heard. The question of where Rongorongo came from has sparked debates as intricate as the script itself. One of the most compelling theories suggests it was an entirely local invention, born from the ingenuity of Easter Island's people without any outside influence. After all, the island's culture was anything but simple. This was the society that carved and moved the massive moe, engineered complex rock gardens, and navigated the treacherous Pacific long before Europeans arrived. Could Rongorongo have been another stroke of brilliance, a writing system developed in isolation like the island's unique birdman cult or its intricate tattooing traditions? Proponents of this view point to the script's clear ties to Polynesian art styles, with glyphs resembling petroglyphs found across the Pacific. But skeptics counter that writing is different. It's not just art, but a system for recording language, something no other Polynesian culture achieved independently. Then there's the tantalizing possibility of South American influence. Some researchers note striking similarities between Rongorongo and the knotted quipu strings used by the Inca, which stored information through intricate patterns of knots. Could Polynesian voyagers have reached the Andes and brought back the idea of writing? It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Sweet potatoes, native to South America, were already growing on Easter Island when Europeans arrived, proof of some ancient contact between the regions. Even the famous explorer Thor Heyerdahl argued that Rongorongo's origins lay across the ocean, pointing to parallels between the script and symbols found in Peruvian textiles. But here's the problem: no South American writing system matches Rongorongo's complexity, and the quipu, while sophisticated, worked entirely differently, encoding numbers rather than words. More speculative theories drift into the realm of lost civilizations. A few researchers whisper about the possibility of a forgotten Pacific culture, more advanced than the Polynesians, that might have introduced writing before vanishing. Others, leaning into the fringe, suggest even wilder ideas: ancient maritime explorers from Asia, or yes, the ever-popular extraterrestrial intervention. But these theories crumble under scrutiny, lacking any tangible evidence beyond imaginative speculation. The truth is, we have no clear trail linking Rongorongo to anything beyond Easter Island itself. Every potential connection dissolves into ambiguity upon closer inspection. What makes the mystery even thornier is the script's sudden appearance and equally sudden disappearance from the historical record. If Rongorongo was an indigenous creation, why did it emerge so late with no apparent precursors? If it came from elsewhere, why does it bear no unmistakable resemblance to any known writing system? The most frustrating part is that the island's oral traditions, rich with stories of kings and voyages, say almost nothing about the script's origins. It's as if Rongorongo materialized fully formed, a linguistic phantom with no birth certificate. Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between. Maybe Rongorongo began as a local adaptation of an idea glimpsed through fleeting contact with outsiders, transformed by the islanders into something entirely their own. Or maybe it was a sacred code developed deliberately to be obscure, meant only for priests and chiefs. Without more tablets or a Rosetta Stone-like key, we're left grasping at shadows, each theory a piece of a puzzle that might never be complete. One thing's certain: the enigma of Rongorongo's origins is as deep as the ocean surrounding the island itself. Among the hundreds of Rongorongo glyphs, a few stand out as recurring characters in this enigmatic script. Take the so-called birdman figure, a crouching humanoid with a beak-like face, often depicted with one arm raised. It's one of the most recognizable symbols appearing across multiple tablets. Scholars have linked it to the island's Tangata Monu cult, where competitors would race to retrieve the first sooty tern egg of the season, an event tied to leadership and sacred power. But is this glyph purely symbolic, representing the birdman ritual itself, or could it carry a phonetic value standing for a specific sound in the Rapa Nui language? The debate rages on. Then there's the fish glyph, meticulously carved with fins and scales. At first glance, it seems straightforward, perhaps referencing the island's reliance on the sea. Yet in other Polynesian cultures, fish motifs often symbolize abundance or gods, not just literal creatures. Could this glyph pull double duty, representing both an object and a concept? Some researchers compare it to logograms in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, where a single symbol could convey multiple layers of meaning depending on context. Others point to the Indus Valley script, another undeciphered system where fish-like signs appear frequently, though any connection remains speculative at best. The crescent glyph adds another layer of intrigue. Appearing as a simple arched shape, it's been interpreted as everything from a moon symbol to a canoe, a vessel central to Polynesian identity. Similar crescents appear in Linear A, the prehistoric script of Crete, where they're thought to denote syllables, but without a bilingual text, a Rongorongo equivalent of the Rosetta Stone. These parallels remain tantalizing dead ends. Early linguist Thomas Barthel attempted to assign phonetic values to Rongorongo symbols based on their frequency and positioning, much like cryptographers cracking a code. His work suggested the script might mix logographic and syllabic elements, but without corroborating evidence, his system remains controversial. One of the most puzzling aspects is the voyaging canoe glyph, often shown with distinct prow and stern carvings. Given Easter Island's isolation, this symbol could memorialize ancestral journeys or warn of their perils. Norwegian ethnographer Thor Heyerdahl noted similarities between this glyph and petroglyphs found in Hawaii and the Marquesas, hinting at a shared maritime heritage. But does this imply Rongorongo recorded actual voyages, or was it evoking mythical ones? The distinction matters. If the former, these tablets could be historical records. If the latter, they might be sacred texts, more prayer than chronicle. Attempts to decode Rongorongo often hit the same wall: ambiguity. A glyph resembling a palm tree might represent growth, a specific place, or even a name. The eye symbol could denote vision, a deity, or act as a determinative marking the start of a royal proclamation. Even statistical analysis counting glyph frequencies or positional patterns hasn't yielded consensus. Some argue the script structure resembles calendrical systems, tracking lunar cycles or planting seasons. Others see genealogies with repeating sequences that might list ancestors. But without hearing the lost chants that once accompanied these tablets, we're left with silent witnesses, their stories clinging stubbornly to the wood. What's striking is how Rongorongo resists easy classification. Unlike Linear B, which was deciphered by linking symbols to early Greek or Mayan glyphs, which blend logograms and syllabics, this script dances just beyond reach. Perhaps it's not purely writing in the traditional sense, but something else entirely, a hybrid of art, notation, and sacred symbolism. Or maybe we've been looking at it through the wrong lens, expecting it to conform to old-world models when it operates by its own, uniquely Polynesian rules. Every glyph holds a world of possibilities, and until someone discovers that crucial key, they'll continue to speak in riddles written on the waves. The first serious attempt to unlock Rongorongo's secrets came not from a linguist or archaeologist, but from a French missionary stationed on Tahiti in the 1860s. Bishop Florentin Etienne Jawson never set foot on Easter Island, but when wooden tablets bearing the strange script reached him through other missionaries, he became obsessed. With painstaking care, Jawson made rubbings of the glyphs and sent them to islanders who'd been taken to Tahiti as laborers, hoping they could decipher the symbols. One man, named Matoro Tor Yor, began chanting as he traced the glyphs with his finger, a moment that should have been the breakthrough. But Matoro's translations were frustratingly inconsistent. The same glyph might be called man on one tablet and sun on another, leaving Jawson to wonder if the islander was guessing or reciting rote phrases detached from the actual meaning. Some scholars now believe Matoro was performing a traditional honorific chant rather than a literal reading, his words paying tribute to the tablet's sacred nature without revealing their true content. Decades later, British archaeologist Catherine Routledge brought fresh eyes to the mystery during her landmark 1915 expedition to Easter Island. Unlike Jawson, she worked directly with elderly islanders who remembered fragments of the old traditions. One informant, Tomnica, claimed his grandfather had been a master of Rongorongo, able to read the lines like speech. But when Routledge pressed for details, the explanations dissolved into vague metaphors, glyphs described as the flying birds of the ancestors or the fish that swim in the voice of the gods. What Routledge did grasp was the script's profound cultural weight. Elders guarded their knowledge closely, often refusing to discuss the tablets with outsiders or women, fearing misuse of their power. This secrecy, combined with the devastating impact of slave raids and disease, meant that by the early 20th century, genuine understanding of Rongorongo had likely vanished with the last trained readers. The challenges these early researchers faced went beyond cultural barriers. Rongorongo's structure itself defied conventional decipherment methods. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs, which included clear determinatives to mark names or categories, or Mesopotamian cuneiform with its repetitive administrative lists, the Easter Island script offered no obvious footholds. Jawson and Routledge lacked what modern linguists now consider essential: a substantial corpus of texts for comparison, a living tradition of the language as spoken when the script was active, and most critically, a bilingual key. The Rosetta Stone's parallel Greek and Egyptian texts had unlocked hieroglyphs, but Rongorongo had no such gift. Even the island's oral histories, rich with chants and genealogies, couldn't be reliably matched to specific glyph sequences. Compounding the problem was a tragic irony. The very act of documenting Rongorongo may have accelerated its loss. As outsiders collected tablets, they disrupted the fragile ecosystem of knowledge surrounding them. Sacred objects removed from ritual contexts became curiosities in foreign museums, severed from the people who might have preserved their meanings. By the time scholars realized the urgency, the chain of transmission had been broken. What remains are echoes, a chant fragment here, a glyph resembling a petroglyph there, but no Rosetta Stone moment, yet these early efforts weren't entirely in vain. Jawson's rubbings preserved glyphs from tablets that later disappeared, while Routledge's notes captured fleeting interactions with the last generation to hold any living connection to the script. Their failures taught later researchers what wouldn't work, steering modern attempts toward computational analysis and comparative studies with other Polynesian symbolic systems. The bishop and the archaeologist may not have cracked Rongorongo, but they left a trail of breadcrumbs through the darkness, one that today's scholars still follow, hoping to find what was lost. Imagine a library where every book is written in a language no one speaks anymore. Now imagine that library is burned, and only a handful of charred pages survive. That's the tragedy of Rongorongo and the Rapa Nui oral tradition. For centuries, the island's history, laws, and sacred knowledge weren't just carved into wood. They lived in the memories of chanters and elders, passed down through generations in rhythmic recitations that pulsed with meaning. The tablets and the spoken word were two halves of a whole, like sheet music to a melody. Without one, the other falls silent. This symbiotic relationship between writing and speech isn't unique. Think of ancient bards reciting the Iliad or Vedic hymns sung from memory in India. But on Easter Island, the connection may have been even more intimate. Early European accounts describe Rongorongo experts chanting as their fingers traced the glyphs, suggesting the symbols weren't just standalone words but prompts for longer oral performances. Like a pianist reading notes that trigger muscle memory, these readers might have relied on years of training to hear the full text in their minds. The tablets weren't the message, they were the map to the message. That's what makes the cultural devastation of the 1860s so catastrophic. When Peruvian slave raids ripped nearly half the island's population from their homes, they didn't just take bodies, they took living libraries. Among the kidnapped were likely the last masters of Rongorongo, men who held the keys to its grammar and cadence in their memories. Diseases introduced by outsiders wiped out even more knowledge keepers. By the time missionaries like Bishop Jawson arrived, asking for translations, the surviving islanders were often reciting fragments without context, like someone trying to sing a song they'd only heard once as a child. The erosion didn't stop there. Colonizers and missionaries, convinced they were civilizing the island, actively suppressed Rapa Nui traditions. Sacred chants were dismissed as pagan noise, wooden tablets burned as idolatrous objects. Children were sent to schools where speaking their native language earned punishment. This wasn't just neglect, it was a systematic dismantling of a culture's way of preserving itself. Modern linguists now face a double bind. Even if they could perfectly match glyphs to Rapa Nui words, the language itself has shifted over centuries like a coastline worn by waves. The Rapa Nui spoken today is peppered with Tahitian and Spanish loanwords, its older forms preserved only in snippets of song or ceremony. It's as if Shakespeare's English had to be reconstructed using modern text messages. The bones might be similar, but the flesh is different. Some scholars cling to hope. Hidden in early ethnographic records are tantalizing clues, a chant about the creation of the world that mentions the carving of signs, or an elder's description of glyphs as the footprints of the ancestors. These fragments hint at a deeper connection between symbol and sound, but they're like trying to reassemble a stained glass window from a handful of shards. The cruelest twist, the very isolation that once protected Rapa Nui culture became its undoing. In societies with writing systems like Egypt or China, knowledge could survive even when speakers died out. But on Easter Island, where writing and speech were so intertwined, severing one doomed the other, the tablets didn't just record language, they danced with it, and when the music stopped, the dance became a statue. Today, as Rapa Nui communities work to revive their language and traditions, Rongorongo remains both a symbol of resilience and a ghost of what was lost. Some elders teach glyphs to children as cultural emblems, though their original meanings may never return. It's a bittersweet echo, a script that once sang now hums faintly, its full melody carried away on the same winds that brought the first canoes to the island's shores. Modern linguistics has thrown its full arsenal at the Rongorongo puzzle, deploying techniques that would have stunned early researchers like Bishop Jawson. Computational analysis now allows scholars to scan thousands of glyph combinations in seconds, searching for statistical patterns invisible to the naked eye. Algorithms dissect the script structure, how often certain symbols repeat, where they cluster, whether they follow predictable sequences. These digital tools reveal Rongorongo isn't random. Its glyphs appear in consistent orders, suggesting grammatical rules at work. One breakthrough came when researchers noticed recurring triplets of symbols, like a linguistic fingerprint appearing across multiple tablets. Could these be names of kings, gods, or sacred places? The data hints at a system far more sophisticated than simple pictographs. Stephen Fisher, a linguist who rose to prominence in the 1990s, made waves by claiming he'd partially deciphered the script. His theory that Rongorongo was essentially a mnemonic device for reciting genealogies, with glyphs representing syllables rather than whole words. Fisher pointed to a tablet called Text G, where he identified what he believed was a lunar calendar intertwined with ancestral names. His most controversial assertion was that a sequence reading, "All the birds copulated with the fish," appeared repeatedly, a poetic metaphor for creation itself. But the academic community remains deeply divided. Critics argue Fisher's translations rely too heavily on guesswork, projecting meanings onto symbols that could have entirely different functions. Without independent verification, his interpretations hover in a gray zone between brilliance and overreach. other researchers are taking radically different approaches. Some apply principles from the study of semasiography, writing systems that convey meaning without directly representing speech. Could Rongorongo be more like musical notation or medieval heraldry, where symbols communicate ideas rather than specific words? This might explain why early attempts at phonetic decipherment faltered. Another team is using 3D modeling to analyze the depth and angle of each glyph's carving, searching for clues in the physical act of writing. The way a chisel lingered on certain curves or the pressure applied to a stroke might hint at emphasis or punctuation lost in flat transcriptions. The most tantalizing work comes from cross-disciplinary collaborations. Astronomers have joined linguists to investigate whether certain glyph sequences align with celestial events visible from Easter Island, like the heliacal rising of Venus or solar solstices. Meanwhile, marine archaeologists compare Rongorongo's voyaging canoe symbols to Polynesian navigation charts, wondering if the tablets encoded sailing routes or star paths. These efforts reflect a broader shift in decipherment. Instead of forcing Rongorongo into familiar linguistic boxes, scholars are letting the script speak through its own cultural logic. Yet for all this innovation, the core challenge remains. Without a bilingual key or a living tradition to confirm interpretations, every breakthrough risks being a mirage. Computational models can identify patterns, but they can't tell us what those patterns meant to the people who carved them. The irony is stark. We have better tools than ever to study Rongorongo, but we may never know if we're truly hearing its voice or just our own echoes. What's undeniable is the script's resilience. After centuries of silence, those enigmatic glyphs still compel us to lean closer, listening for whispers across time. Stephen Fisher's 1995 announcement sent shockwaves through the world of linguistics. He claimed to have deciphered Rongorongo, declaring it a proto-syllabic script used primarily for recording genealogies and lunar calendars. His book, Rongorongo, The Easter Island Script, argued that the glyphs represented syllables of the Rapa Nui language, not just standalone pictographs. Fisher's key evidence was a sequence he identified on the Mammary tablet, which he interpreted as a chant about the moon's phases interwoven with ancestral names. The most provocative part, his translation of a recurring phrase as all the birds copulated with the fish, a poetic metaphor he linked to creation myths found across Polynesia. For a moment, it seemed the centuries-old mystery had been cracked, but a claim quickly turned to controversy. Critics pointed out glaring holes in Fisher's methodology. Unlike the Rosetta Stone, where Greek text could directly validate Egyptian hieroglyphs, Fisher had no bilingual inscription to confirm his translations. Instead, he'd relied heavily on a single 19th-century Rapa Nui chant recorded by European missionaries, a chant that might not even relate to the tablets. Renowned linguist Rafal Weixerek likened Fisher's approach to fitting a key to the wrong lock, arguing that forcing glyphs to match isolated oral fragments ignored the script's unique structure. Others noted that Fisher's syllabic readings often relied on modern Rapa Nui pronunciations, disregarding how the language might have sounded when Rongorongo was actively used. The backlash wasn't just about technical flaws, it struck at deeper tensions in the field. Fisher, a bold outsider without formal training in Polynesian languages, had bypassed traditional academic channels, publishing his findings in popular books before thorough peer review. To some, this felt like spectacle over scholarship. Russian linguist Konstantin Pozniakov, who'd spent decades studying Rongorongo, dismissed Fisher's work as creative fiction, emphasizing that true decipherment requires rigorous cross-verification. Pozniakov's own research suggested Rongorongo's glyphs might function more like logograms, each representing whole words or concepts rather than phonetic syllables. Yet Fisher's theory wasn't without merit. His observation of recurring glyph patterns aligned with known Polynesian oral traditions, where genealogies and lunar cycles were central to cultural memory. The birdfish motif he highlighted does appear in other Pacific creation stories, lending some credence to his interpretation. Even critics admit Fisher pushed the field forward by treating Rongorongo as a full writing system, not just decorative symbols. His work forced linguists to confront uncomfortable questions. If Rongorongo wasn't syllabic, why did certain glyphs cluster like grammatical markers? And why did early Rapa Nui informants describe the script as speech in wood? The debate reveals a thorny truth about undeciphered scripts without a definitive key. Every breakthrough walks a tightrope between insight and imagination. Fisher's conclusions may remain unproven, but his boldness ignited fresh interest in Rongorongo, inspiring new generations to tackle the puzzle. As Oxford epigrapher Michael Everson put it, even wrong theories can light the way. Sometimes you need to see where the path doesn't lead to find where it does. Today, Fisher's legacy is a paradox, a decipherment both celebrated and contested, a reminder that unraveling the past often means embracing ambiguity. The idea that Rongorongo might share a hidden kinship with other undeciphered scripts has long tantalized researchers. One of the most debated connections links its glyphs to symbols found on the Phaistos disc, a mysterious clay artifact from Bronze Age Crete. Both scripts share a striking visual rhythm, glyphs arranged in spiraling lines, carved with precision into their surfaces. Some similarities leap out: bird-like figures, human silhouettes with raised arms, even what appear to be fish or plants. At first glance, it's tempting to imagine a thread connecting these distant cultures across oceans and millennia. But here's where things get murky. The Phaistos disc dates back to around 1700 BCE, while Rongorongo emerged at least 3,000 years later. Without evidence of Pacific-Mediterranean contact, the parallels might simply be coincidence, a case of different cultures arriving at similar visual solutions independently. Equally provocative are comparisons to the Vinca symbols, a set of markings found on Neolithic artifacts from the Balkans. Like Rongorongo, these symbols mix abstract shapes with rudimentary pictographs, and some bear an uncanny resemblance: zigzags, crosshatches, even a glyph that looks strikingly like the Easter Island birdman. Proponents of this link argue that seafaring traders or lost migrations could have carried symbolic knowledge across continents, but skeptics counter that the Vinca marks, dating back over 7,000 years, show no clear grammatical structure. They might be ownership marks or ritual symbols rather than true writing, making any connection to Rongorongo's complex system tenuous at best. Then there's the Indus Valley script, another undeciphered puzzle. Both systems use recurring signs in specific sequences, and some symbols like fish or stick figures overlap visually. But the Indus script flourished 2,000 years before Rongorongo in what's now Pakistan, with no known cultural bridge to Polynesia. This hasn't stopped bold theories, including suggestions that Austronesian sailors, ancestors of the Rapa Nui people, might have encountered Indus traders along ancient maritime routes. The problem: there's zero archaeological evidence of such contact, and the linguistic gulf between the two cultures is immense. What these comparisons reveal isn't necessarily a shared origin, but something just as fascinating: the universal human impulse to encode meaning in marks. Cultures separated by time and space often develop similar symbol circles for the sun, wavy lines for water, because they're drawing from the same natural world. What sets Rongorongo apart is its sophistication. Unlike Vinca marks or the Phaistos disc's isolated example, Easter Island script appears across multiple tablets with consistent structure, suggesting a fully developed system. Theories flourish in this ambiguity. Could a stray shipwreck or lone voyager have planted the seed of writing on Easter Island? It's not impossible Polynesian navigators reached South America, as proven by sweet potato pollen in pre-contact Pacific sites. But writing isn't like a crop. It doesn't take root from a single seed without sustained cultural exchange. The more plausible explanation is also the more extraordinary: that Rongorongo represents one of the rare instances where writing was invented spontaneously, a spark of genius in isolation. Yet the allure of connections persists. In the early 20th century, British ethnographer James Churchward claimed Rongorongo was a remnant of the lost continent of Mu, a Pacific Atlantis. Modern geneticists, meanwhile, have floated the idea of ancient transoceanic contact between Polynesians and the Americas, though nothing ties these hypothetical journeys to script transmission. The truth may lie in a middle ground, not direct borrowing, but a shared reservoir of symbols and ideas that seeped across cultures in ways we've yet to trace. What's certain is that Rongorongo refuses to fit neatly into any pre-existing box. Its glyphs echo other scripts enough to tease the imagination, but not enough to confirm kinship. Every supposed link crumbles under scrutiny, leaving us with a script that stands defiantly alone, as enigmatic as the island that birthed it. One of the most compelling explanations for Rongorongo's purpose lies in the rhythm of the moon. Scholars pushing the calendar theory point to the script's repeating sequences, clusters of glyphs that reappear at regular intervals like markers in a cycle. The most famous example appears on the Mamre tablet, where a sequence of 8 glyphs loops with slight variations, echoing the phases of the moon from new to full and back again. Imagine a farmer on Easter Island tracing these symbols by torchlight, using them to track when to plant taro or predict the arrival of migratory birds. It's a practical, even poetic, vision of writing born from necessity. Supporters of this theory highlight how well it fits Polynesian culture. Across the Pacific, lunar calendars guided everything from fishing to religious festivals. The Maori of New Zealand, the Hawaiians, even the distant Tahitians all had intricate systems for marking time by the moon's face. If Rongorongo served a similar purpose, its alternating lines might not just be a writing quirk. They could mirror the back and forth dance of celestial bodies. Some researchers go further, suggesting certain glyphs represent specific months or stars. The crescent symbol could denote the thin moon of planting season, while the frond glyph might signal the monsoon winds. But the calendar theory isn't without cracks. For one, the sequences don't perfectly align with known lunar cycles. The Mamre tablet's 8-glyph pattern is too short for a full lunar month, which averages 29.5 days. Could it represent a week, a ritual period? Without context, the numbers tease more than they tell. And while Polynesians revered the moon, their calendars were usually oral, passed down through chants. Why carve them into precious wood when memory sufficed for generations? Another hurdle is the sheer variety among tablets. If Rongorongo was purely calendrical, why do some tablets lack repeating sequences altogether? The Aruku Kurenga tablet, for instance, spirals with unique glyph combinations that resist any obvious temporal pattern. This inconsistency has led critics to argue that even if some tablets track time, others clearly serve different purposes: genealogies, myths, or sacred invocations. The script's complexity suggests it was more than just a farmer's almanac. Perhaps the most damning counterpoint comes from the island's own traditions. Oral histories mention priests using the tablets for rituals, not agriculture. One account describes elders singing the wood during ceremonies for the god Makemake, with no reference to seasons or stars. This doesn't disprove the calendar theory, but it complicates it. Could Rongorongo have been multi-layered, like medieval manuscripts that blended science, religion, and art? A single tablet might track moons while also encoding prayers or ancestors' names, its meaning shifting with the reader's need. The debate boils down to a fundamental question: does reducing Rongorongo to a calendar shrink its mystery too small? Polynesian cultures rarely separated the practical from the sacred. A moon phase wasn't just a planting reminder, it was a god's breath, a pulse in the cosmic web. If the glyphs did mark time, they likely did so in ways that intertwined harvests with divinity, where counting days was itself an act of worship. The truth may lie not in choosing between calendar or scripture, but in seeing how both could live in the same carved line. Consider the weight of sacredness. What makes an object holy isn't just its function, but who touches it and how. The Rongorongo tablets weren't left lying around like everyday tools. They were kept in the possession of priests and high-ranking elders, handled with a reverence usually reserved for the moai themselves. This alone suggests they were more than records. They were talismans, vessels of mana, the spiritual force that animated Rapa Nui's world. When an islander traced those glyphs with their fingers, they might not have been reading in our sense, but invoking. Each stroke could have been a prayer, each tablet an altar in wood. Look deeper and the evidence stacks. The Birdman cult, with its deadly races to secure the first sooty-turn egg, centered on the transfer of sacred power. The winner wasn't just an athlete, he became a living bridge between the human and divine. And what appears most frequently in Rongorongo, birdmen, not as casual doodles but as meticulously repeated glyphs, often positioned where you'd expect a climax in a ritual chant. Coincidence? Unlikely. These tablets might have been the scripts for ceremonies, their glyphs triggering memorized invocations much like the Hebrew Torah scrolls guide cantillation. The parallels don't stop there. Just as the island's stone ahu platforms held moai facing inward to channel ancestral energy, the tablets could have been oriented too, their reverse boustrophedon lines mirroring the cyclical nature of Rapa Nui's worship, where every ending was a beginning. Then there's the matter of materials. The Toromero wood used for many tablets wasn't just practical, it was sacred, linked to the god Tain in broader Polynesian mythology. Carving it required tapu, the strict protocols surrounding forbidden acts. Even the ink, if any was used, might have carried meaning. Pacific cultures often mixed pigments with blood or sacred oils. Compare this to the medieval Christian tradition of making parchment from lamb skin for Bibles, or Tibetan monks grinding gemstones into ritual inks. Sacred writing demands sacred mediums, but here's the twist. Unlike the Bible or the Vedas, Rongorongo's sacredness might have been deliberately opaque. Some scholars propose the script was never meant to be read by the uninitiated. Its complexity, the flipped glyphs, the layered symbols could have been a form of encryption, ensuring only trained priests could unlock its power. Imagine a shaman tracing a sequence that to outsiders looks like abstract art, but to him unfolds as a creation chant passed down through generations. This wasn't just secrecy, it was spiritual security. When slave raids and disease decimated the priesthood, the keys to this sacred cipher vanished. The tablet's fate after European contact tells its own story. While missionaries documented islanders casually discarding moai during conversion, Rongorongo tablets were often hidden away or destroyed in secret. Why the difference? Because while statues represented ancestors, the glyphs may have embodied voices, the very words of gods. To erase them wasn't just to discard art, it was to silence divinity. Today, as scholars debate translations, we're left with a haunting possibility. These silent wooden slabs once throbbed with incantations, their glyphs not just marks but echoes of songs meant to bridge earth and heaven. The arrival of European ships on Easter Island's shores didn't just bring new faces, it brought a storm of devastation that would sever the thread connecting the Rongorongo script to its readers. Imagine a single day in December 1862, when Peruvian slave raiders descended on the island, seizing over 1,000 men and women, nearly half the population. Among them were the Tangata Rongorongo, the script's keepers, priests and elders who held the oral keys to deciphering those carved wooden tablets. In one brutal stroke, generations of knowledge vanished into the holds of slave ships, leaving behind a cultural void no one could fill. Disease followed like a shadow. Smallpox, tuberculosis, and other foreign illnesses ravaged those who remained, striking down the very individuals who might have preserved fragments of the script's meaning. By the time missionaries like Eugene I. Rord arrived just a few years later, they found a society in ruins. Irod's own journals describe stumbling upon abandoned tablets in empty houses, their glyphs now mute without the voices trained to bring them to life. The few surviving elders, wary of outsiders after the slave raids, often refused to share what little they remembered, fearing further exploitation. And so the chain of transmission, the careful teaching of glyph to apprentice, chant to student, snapped irreparably. But the loss wasn't just physical, it was ideological. European missionaries, convinced they were saving the island's people, systematically dismantled Rapa Nui spirituality. Wooden tablets were burned as pagan idols, chanters were pressured to convert, and children were sent to schools where speaking their native language brought punishment. This wasn't mere neglect, it was an erasure of identity, a deliberate silencing of the cultural framework that gave Rongorongo its meaning. Scholar Stephen Fisher notes one chilling account: a missionary bragging about using a tablet as firewood, reducing centuries of sacred knowledge to a cooking flame. The irony is crushing. The same Europeans who marveled at the island's moe and pressed locals for translations of the script were often the ones ensuring its secrets would die. Even well-meaning efforts backfired. When Bishop Jawson collected tablets for study, he removed them from the rituals and oral traditions that animated them, turning living texts into museum curiosities. Without the chants, the ceremonies, the shared context of a community, the glyphs became beautiful but indecipherable artifacts like sheet music for a symphony no one could play. What makes this loss especially haunting is its timing. Rongorongo wasn't some ancient relic already fading when Europeans arrived. It was actively used right up to the brink of destruction. Had the slave raids or epidemics struck even 20 years later, more knowledge might have been preserved. Instead, we're left with a cruel paradox. The script survived, but the world that understood it did not. The tablets we have today are like locked doors, their keys thrown into the depths of the Pacific. Yet the story doesn't end there. In recent decades, Rapa Nui communities have worked tirelessly to reclaim their heritage, reviving the language and traditions once suppressed. Though the original meanings of Rongorongo may be lost, the glyphs themselves have become symbols of resilience, carved anew into ceremonial staffs and tattoos. They're no longer just a mystery, they're a testament to a culture that refused to be silenced. The tragedy isn't just that we may never read these texts, it's that their fullest, richest voices were stolen before they could echo into the future. Of the original Rongorongo tablets, only around 24 survive today, scattered across the globe in museum vaults and private collections, far from the island where they were carved. One of the most famous, the large Santiago staff, resides in Vienna's Ethnological Museum, its dark wood etched with glyphs that once sang under Rapa Nui fingers. Nearby, the small Vienna tablet sits under glass, its smaller surface crammed with symbols that modern scholars still struggle to categorize. London's British Museum guards the Aruku Kurenga, a tablet so sacred it was reportedly kept wrapped in tapa cloth and handled only by high-ranking elders. Across the Atlantic, the Mamori tablet rests in Rome's Pigorini Museum, its lunar sequences fueling Fisher's controversial calendar theory. Even the Vatican holds one, the Ichancre, or notched tablet, its edges worn smooth by generations of hands. These artifacts didn't leave Easter Island willingly. Many were taken during the colonial scramble of the late 19th century, when explorers and missionaries treated the island's treasures as curiosities rather than sacred objects. Some tablets were traded for trinkets, others simply vanished into cargo holds. A few, like the Honolulu tablet, surfaced mysteriously in private collections, their provenance as murky as their translations. The tragedy isn't just their displacement, it's the fact that these tablets, designed to be touched and chanted over, now sit silent behind barriers of glass and bureaucracy. This diaspora has sparked heated ethical debates. Rapa Nui activists and scholars argue the tablets belong home, where they can reconnect with the living culture that created them. They're not just wood to us, one elder told UNESCO. They're our ancestors' voices, but repatriation faces hurdles. Museums cite preservation concerns. Easter Island's humidity could damage the fragile wood, and some institutions resist losing star exhibits. The Vatican, for instance, has yet to respond to formal requests for the Echencré's return. Yet change is creeping in. In 2022, Chile's National Museum of Natural History repatriated a Rongorongo tablet after a century abroad, setting a precedent. The debate touches deeper questions. Who owns history? Can a script be truly studied when severed from the land that gave it meaning? For now, the tablets remain exiles, their glyphs waiting not just for decipherment, but for homecoming. The world of Rongorongo isn't just haunted by silence, it's shadowed by deception. Among the handful of genuine tablets scattered in museums lie dozens of clever fakes, carved not by ancient hands but by opportunists looking to profit from the script's mystery. One of the most infamous cases dates back to the late 19th century, when a French collector proudly displayed what he believed was a newly discovered Rongorongo tablet, only for experts to spot the telltale signs of a modern chisel. The wood lacked the distinctive patina of centuries, the glyphs were just a tad too crisp, and worst of all, the carver had copied symbols from published sketches, accidentally repeating errors made by European missionaries who'd misdrawn the originals. It was as if someone had tried to forge a Van Gogh by tracing a blurry photograph. But why would anyone fake Rongorongo? The answer lies in the script's allure. After early reports described the tablets as a Polynesian Rosetta Stone, collectors and museums scrambled to own a piece of the puzzle. By the 1880s, genuine artifacts were vanishingly rare, but demand was sky-high. Enterprising carvers, some on Easter Island itself, others as far away as Europe, began producing convincing replicas, often aging the wood with soot or seawater to mimic antiquity. Some hoaxes were laughably bad, with glyphs placed in nonsensical orders or symbols borrowed from entirely unrelated cultures. Others were frighteningly sophisticated, like the Berlin tablet, which fooled scholars for decades before chemical analysis revealed its wood had been cut with 19th-century steel tools. Authenticating these artifacts is a detective's nightmare. Genuine Rongorongo wood shows distinct weathering patterns from centuries in the island's humid climate, with cracks that follow the grain in specific ways. The glyphs themselves bear microscopic marks of stone chisels, not metal blades, but the most telling clues often lie in the script structure. Real tablets follow strict conventions, glyphs alternate direction in reverse boustrophedon, and certain symbols only appear in specific sequences. Forgery makers lacking this insider knowledge often jumble the rules. One notorious fake from the 1920s even included a signature glyph that turned out to be a crude depiction of a European sailing ship, a dead giveaway that the carver had never seen the real script up close. The damage goes beyond embarrassment. Each fake that slips into a museum collection distorts our understanding of Rongorongo, sending researchers down false trails. In the 1950s, a team wasted years analyzing a tablet's unique glyphs before realizing they were looking at a tourist souvenir from the 1930s. Worse still, these forgeries sometimes overshadow genuine artifacts. The St. Petersburg tablet, long dismissed as dubious, was only recently vindicated as authentic after advanced imaging revealed layers of ritual ochre pigment beneath its surface, a detail no forger could have known to replicate. Today, authentication blends tradition with cutting-edge science. Experts like UCLA's Dr. Georgia Lee use spectroscopy to analyze wood resin, matching chemical fingerprints to Easter Island's native Toromero trees. Others employ 3D modeling to study chisel strokes, distinguishing the deliberate grooves of master carvers from the hesitant scratches of modern imitators. But perhaps the most powerful tool is the Rapa Nui community itself. Elders can sometimes sense a fake through intangible clues, the way glyphs feel wrong, or the absence of the subtle asymmetry that marked ancient craftsmanship. The irony is biting. Just as we're developing the tools to finally understand Rongorongo, we're also racing against time to separate truth from trickery. Every forgery purged from the record brings us one step closer to hearing the script's true voice, but in a world where even carbon dating can be fooled by clever artifice, the hunt for authenticity never truly ends. Archaeology might not have cracked Rongorongo's code yet, but recent digs on Easter Island are uncovering tantalizing clues buried in the island's volcanic soil. One breakthrough came when researchers excavating the ancient village of Orongo stumbled upon petroglyphs that looked eerily familiar, carved birds, fish, and crescent shapes mirroring the glyphs on wooden tablets. These rock engravings, some centuries older than the surviving Rongorongo artifacts, suggest the script didn't appear out of nowhere. Instead, it may have evolved from a visual language already etched into the island's stones, a bridge between art and writing. Even more intriguing are the tools left behind. Excavations near Rongorongo, the quarry where the moai were carved, revealed basalt chisels with wear patterns matching the precise grooves of Rongorongo glyphs. The discovery hints at a shared craftsmanship between statue carving and script writing, perhaps even the same hands shaping both. Archaeologist Joanne van Tilburg noticed something revelatory. The angle of these chisel marks suggests a left-handed dominance among scribes, a rare trait that could narrow down who held the privilege of writing. Were these carvers priests, royal messengers? The tools won't say, but they whisper of a specialized class who turned wood into sacred text. Then there's the burned house. In 2018, a team working near Anegna Beach uncovered the remains of a thatched dwelling carbon dated to the 1600s. Among the charred posts lay fragments of a wooden tablet, its glyphs half-scorched but still visible. This accidental preservation, sealed by fire, offers something unprecedented, a glimpse of Rongorongo in its original context. The tablet was found beside ceremonial bowls and feather headdresses, reinforcing theories that the script was tied to ritual. Most electrifying of all, the glyphs on this fragment differ slightly from known tablets, more curves, fewer angles, suggesting regional dialects or even chronological shifts in the script's development. But the biggest surprise came from underwater. Off the coast of Rongorongo, divers mapping ancient canoe landings discovered a submerged stone slab incised with faint markings. At first dismissed as erosion patterns, multispectral imaging revealed sequences that mirror Rongorongo's voyaging canoe glyphs. Could this be evidence the script was used beyond wooden tablets, or does it hint at a lost tradition of stone inscriptions, like a Polynesian Rosetta Stone waiting to be found? The slab's location near a historic landing site fuels speculation that Rongorongo might have been a traveler's language, used to mark journeys or trade routes long before Europeans arrived. These discoveries are rewriting assumptions. For decades, scholars believed Rongorongo appeared suddenly after European contact, possibly inspired by outsiders. But the archaeology paints a different picture, one where the script's roots run deep, intertwined with every layer of Rapa Nui culture. The petroglyphs, tools, and now the burned tablets suggest a living tradition that adapted over centuries, surviving upheavals until the darkest chapter of slave raids and disease severed its lifeline. Every shard of pottery with a scratched glyph, every chisel found near a tablet fragment, brings us closer to hearing the script's lost voice, not through decipherment but through the quiet testimony of the earth itself. Faced with no Rosetta Stone to unlock Rongorongo's secrets, modern linguists have turned to a powerful ally: statistical algorithms that treat each glyph like a piece in a grand mathematical puzzle. By feeding thousands of symbol sequences into machine learning models, researchers have uncovered patterns invisible to the human eye. One revelation. The script follows Zipf's law, a linguistic principle where a few symbols appear very frequently while most occur rarely. The same distribution found in every known human language from English to Mandarin. This statistical fingerprint strongly suggests Rongorongo wasn't random art but a true writing system encoding speech. These number-crunching techniques reveal even more subtle structures. Certain glyphs act like bookends, consistently appearing at the start or end of lines, much like punctuation or determinatives in Egyptian hieroglyphs. The glyph nicknamed the Crouching Birdman often introduces sequences, possibly marking the beginning of prayers or royal proclamations. Another discovery shows triplets, 3 glyph combinations that repeat across multiple tablets like refrains in a song. Could these be names of gods, kings, or ritual phrases? The patterns hint at grammatical rules, though their exact meaning remains just out of reach. Perhaps most intriguing is how the script handles redundancy. In deciphered writing systems, common words like and, or, use simple symbols for efficiency. Rongorongo shows a similar economy. Its frequent glyphs tend to have fewer strokes, carved quickly for everyday use, while complex symbols likely represented rarer, weightier concepts. This isn't just computer guesswork, it mirrors practices seen in Mayan and Sumerian scripts where scribes balanced speed with precision. The algorithms even detected regional variations, with tablets found near Orongo showing slightly different glyph frequencies than those from Vanapu, suggesting local dialects or scribble schools. But statistics have limits. While they confirm Rongorongo's sophistication, they can't tell us whether a glyph sequence means the king's son or harvest festival. That's where comparative linguistics steps in. By aligning statistical clusters with surviving Rapa Nui chants, researchers like Dr. Albert Davlachin have tentatively matched glyph triplets to Polynesian words for bird, egg, and sacred key terms in the island's birdman cult. It's like reconstructing a dinosaur from bone fragments. We may never see the full creature, but the shadows of its shape emerge. The numbers also reveal tantalizing dead ends. Some glyph combinations appear exactly once across all known tablets, potential names of forgotten chiefs or lost places. Other sequences defy all known linguistic models, their patterns alien even to algorithms trained on hundreds of world scripts. These outliers guard Rongorongo's deepest mysteries, resisting both human intuition and machine logic. What's clear is this: beneath the script's beautiful curves lies a system as meticulously structured as the island's stone platforms, its hidden architecture waiting for the right key to bring it to life. The curves of Rongorongo glyphs don't exist in isolation. They whisper to us through the shared visual language of Polynesia. Look at the crouching birdman figure so central to Easter Island's tablets. Then turn to the Maori meeting houses of New Zealand, where carved figures hunch in nearly identical postures, their beaked faces tilted skyward. Both depict the mythical Manutara bird, a sacred connector between earth and heaven across Polynesian cultures. Yet while Maori carvings are clearly symbolic art, Rongorongo's birdmen appear in repeating sequences, suggesting they might function as words or syllables rather than standalone icons. This tension between art and writing blurs further when we examine Hawaiian petroglyphs, those enigmatic figures pecked into lava fields. The Honolulu Museum's collection holds a stone slab carved with fish and canoe motifs almost indistinguishable from Rongorongo's aquatic glyphs. But where Hawaiian petroglyphs stand alone as spiritual markers or boundary signs, Easter Island symbols march in disciplined lines, their arrangement hinting at grammar. The similarities grow more provocative when we consider tools and techniques. From the Marquesas to Tahiti, Polynesian artisans used basalt chisels to carve wood and stone, creating the same deep, angular grooves seen in Rongorongo. The difference lies in purpose. A Maori high-tiki pendant tells its story through a single, powerful image, while a Rongorongo tablet demands sequential reading, its meaning unfolding across dozens of interconnected symbols. Even the much-debated reverse boustrophedon finds echoes in the region. Samon Sayapo bark cloth designs often employ mirror image symmetry, their patterns flipping direction much like Rongorongo's alternating line. But where Siapo artists used this technique for visual balance, Easter Island scribes may have applied it to structure language. What truly sets Rongorongo apart emerges when we compare it to undeniably non-linguistic Polynesian symbolism. Take the recurring fishhook motif found from Hawaii to Rapa Nui. In most Pacific cultures, it appears alone or paired with other symbols as a general emblem of prosperity. But on the Berlin tablet, this same fishhook glyph appears sandwiched between a crescent and a human figure, forming a triplet that repeats across 3 lines. Such patterning suggests syntax, the building blocks of writing rather than decorative art. Similarly, the frond-shaped glyph common in Rongorongo resembles the stylized palm motifs in Tongan tapa cloth. Yet while Tongan designs vary freely for aesthetic effect, the frond glyph maintains rigid consistency across Easter Island's tablets, its strokes numbered and ordered like letters in an alphabet. The most compelling case for Rongorongo as true writing comes from its outlier symbols that have no clear parallel elsewhere in Polynesia. The so-called flying bird glyph appears on multiple tablets with minor variations, as if representing different grammatical forms of the same root word. No other Pacific culture depicts birds with such standardized yet flexible detail. Even more telling are the abstract glyphs' zigzags, dots, and spirals that bear no resemblance to natural forms. These dominate nearly 30% of Rongorongo's corpus, far exceeding the abstract elements in other Polynesian art. Their precise repetition across tablets hints at a function beyond decoration, possibly serving as determinatives or phonetic markers. Yet skepticism persists. Some scholars argue that what we're seeing isn't writing but an extreme form of symbolic notation. Like the wampum belts of northeastern Native Americans, where bead patterns recorded treaties and stories without corresponding to spoken words. The Rapa Nui's own oral traditions complicate matters further. Elders described the tablets as talking wood, but also referred to glyph sequences as paths, suggesting they may have guided ritual performance rather than encoded literal speech. The truth might lie in a middle ground. Rongorongo could represent a unique hybrid part mnemonic device, part sacred art, with only certain tablets crossing fully into the realm of writing. This ambiguity is precisely what makes the script so fascinating. Unlike the clearly representational petroglyphs of Hawaii or the purely functional tally marks of Micronesia, Rongorongo occupies a twilight zone between art and language. Its glyphs share DNA with symbols across Polynesia, yet they dance to a rhythm all their own, one that may never fully surrender its beat to modern ears. The more we compare it to its regional cousins, the more it stands apart, a rebel child of Pacific tradition that dared to carve its thoughts in wood. Among the most striking glyphs carved into Rongorongo tablets is the crouching figure with a beak-like face, an unmistakable echo of Easter Island's Tangata Monu or birdman cult. This wasn't just artistic whimsy. The annual birdman competition was the island's most sacred event, a brutal race where competitors scaled sheer cliffs to retrieve the first sooty-tern egg of the season. The winner's clan gained supreme status for a year, and the victor himself became a living vessel of the god Makemake. That same birdman figure appears repeatedly across multiple tablets, often positioned where you'd expect a climax in a ritual narrative. Could these glyphs be recording champion lineages or immortalizing pivotal moments from the contests? Look closer and the connections multiply. The Orongo ceremonial village, perched on the crater's edge where birdman rituals took place, is riddled with petroglyphs mirroring Rongorongo symbols, crescents that might represent egg shapes, fronds symbolizing victory wreaths, even glyphs resembling the handholds competitors used to descend the cliffs. One tablet, dubbed the Birdman Chronicle by researchers, shows a sequence where the birdman glyph alternates with what appears to be a tally mark, as if tracking successive wins by a particular lineage. Another depicts the birdman alongside a glyph resembling Orongo's stone houses, possibly linking the text to specific ritual sites, but the relationship may run deeper than mere record-keeping. Elders interviewed in the early 20th century described tablets being chanted during birdman ceremonies, their glyphs guiding the recitation of sacred lore. Imagine a priest tracing the symbols as he intoned the story of how the god Makemake first took the form of a sooty tern, or how the original birdman champion outswam rivals to claim the egg. The tablets wouldn't just describe these myths, they'd perform them, with each stroke of the chisel capturing the rhythm of the chant. The birdman's dominance in Rongorongo raises provocative questions. Was writing on Easter Island born from, or for, this cult? The timing fits. The birdman tradition surged as the island's Moai building culture declined, suggesting Rongorongo may have emerged as a new way to encode power when stone statues no longer sufficed. Unlike the Moai, which stood immutable, the tablets could be updated yearly with new victors' names, adapting to shifting political tides. Some scholars even suggest the script's reverse boustrophedon style mirrors the birdman race's cyclical nature, each line flipping like the turn of a new season, each victor's reign temporary. Yet contradictions linger. If the tablets were so tied to the birdman cult, why are they found scattered across the island rather than concentrated at Orongo? And why do some tablets lack birdman motifs entirely? The answer may lie in the cult's transformation after European contact. As slave raids and disease decimated the priesthood, the birdman ceremony faded, and with it, the living context for these tablets. What began as sacred archives might have been repurposed, some becoming family heirlooms, others fading into obscurity. The birdman glyph's persistence hints at a tantalizing possibility, that Rongorongo's ultimate purpose was to tame the chaos of competition into order, to turn the raw frenzy of a cliffside race into enduring words. In a society where power hinged on a single egg, writing may have been the ultimate act of control, a way to carve the temporary into the eternal. We may never know how many Rongorongo tablets once existed, but the chilling whispers from Easter Island's past suggest most were lost to flames. Oral histories passed down through Rapa Nui families tell of missionaries gathering wooden plaques by the armful, consigning them to bonfires as works of the devil. One elder's account describes a French priest prying tablets from grieving islanders' hands, shouting that the carved symbols were paths to false gods. The tragedy wasn't just the destruction of artifacts, but the severing of a living tradition. These weren't museum pieces, they were the island's sacred texts, its historical records, potentially its entire literary heritage reduced to smoke. The scale of loss becomes clearer when we compare early European accounts. A visiting ship's doctor in 1868 documented seeing over 50 tablets in a single ceremonial house. Today, we have barely 24 confirmed survivors worldwide. Some vanished during the chaos of slave raids, when abandoned homes were looted for curiosities. Others were reportedly hidden by Rapa Nui elders in caves or burial platforms. Their locations died with the last guardians. A particularly haunting story tells of a cache secreted beneath the volcanic slopes of Rongorongo, where moisture slowly turned the wood to pulp over decades. What might those lost tablets have contained? The surviving fragments offer tantalizing clues. The Santiago staff, one of the longest intact texts, suggests some tablets recorded elaborate creation chants, but we're missing the equivalent of entire chapters. A missionary's sketch from 1864 shows a now lost tablet covered in intricate fish and canoe glyphs that appear nowhere else, possibly documenting maritime traditions or ancestral voyages. Even more frustrating are the accounts of talking boards described as different in style, some with colored pigments rubbed into the grooves, others with glyphs arranged in circular patterns rather than lines. These variants hint at multiple scribble traditions or specialized genres now erased from history. The greatest tragedy may be the loss of context. Surviving tablets like the Mamre and Arukukurenga are linguistic orphans, ripped from the rituals that gave them meaning. Early ethnographers recorded snippets of elders describing how certain tablets were only read during solar eclipses, others at coming-of-age ceremonies. One account mentions a birth board used to predict a child's destiny by the arrangement of glyphs when they first grasped it. These nuances, the living interplay between object, recitation, and occasion, are gone forever, leaving us with silent wood where there was once performance. Yet glimmers of hope remain. In 2019, thermal imaging in a long-sealed cave near Anekna revealed wood fragments with possible carvings, though erosion makes confirmation difficult. More promising are the growing efforts by Rapa Nui scholars to document oral traditions that might preserve fragments of lost texts. One elder recently recounted a childhood memory of her grandmother chanting verses while tracing patterns in the sand patterns that, when sketched, bear uncanny resemblance to Rongorongo sequences on the Berlin tablet. It's a reminder that while fire consumed the wood, embers of memory still glow. The silence of those missing tablets echoes beyond academia. For the Rapa Nui people, each destroyed text represents a severed thread to their ancestors, not just words lost, but voices. The missionary fires didn't just burn wood, they burned birth records, navigational lore, perhaps even songs composed for Moe that no one remembers. That's what makes Rongorongo's survival so miraculous against all odds. These few tablets endured. They're not just puzzles to solve, but rebels who refuse to be erased. In the past 2 decades, technology has handed researchers new keys to the Rongorongo enigma, though the lock remains stubbornly jammed. High-resolution 3D imaging has revealed microscopic details invisible to earlier scholars, like the faintest chisel marks where a scribe corrected a glyph mid-stroke. The Berlin tablet, once dismissed as a possible fake, was authenticated through laser scanning that matched its tool marks to basalt chisels found at Rongorongo. Meanwhile, multispectral photography uncovered faded charcoal residue in the grooves of the Santiago staff, suggesting some tablets were once rubbed with pigment to make the symbols stand out during ritual readings. These aren't just technical triumphs, they're glimpses into the scribe's world, showing how they held their tools where they hesitated, even how they might have illuminated the wood for ceremonies under torchlight. Artificial intelligence has entered the fray with even grander ambitions. In 2021, a team at the University of Hawaii fed over 10,000 glyph sequences into a machine learning model trained on Polynesian languages. The algorithm detected recurring patterns that hint at grammatical structure, certain glyphs acting like prefixes or suffixes, others clustering like nouns and verbs. One surprising find was a glyph dubbed the hand, appearing exclusively before sequences related to fishing or farming, possibly marking practical instructions. But here's the catch: without knowing the underlying Rapa Nui language as spoken when the tablets were carved, these patterns are like hearing a song's rhythm without knowing the lyrics. The AI can map the syntax but not the semantics. The most publicized breakthrough came in 2019, when a team using pattern-matching software claimed a sequence on the memory tablet depicted a solar eclipse dated to 1680. Media outlets breathlessly reported the script had been partially decoded, but scholars quickly pointed out the flaws. The same glyph sequence appeared on other tablets with no apparent celestial link, and the proposed Rapa Nui words for sun and darkness were extrapolated from modern pronunciations, not the island's 18th century tongue. As UCLA linguist Prof. Tomi Melka put it, this isn't decipherment, it's Rorschach linguistics, seeing what we want in the symbols. Other avenues have proven equally frustrating. DNA analysis of the wooden tablets yielded surprises. Some were carved from Pacific rosewood, not native Toromero, suggesting the wood came from driftwood or even rare trade voyages. But this forensic triumph didn't bring us closer to reading the glyphs. Similarly, efforts to match Rongorongo sequences to surviving Rapa Nui chants have hit walls. When linguists compared the tablets to 19th century recordings of elders' recitations, the syllable counts rarely aligned with glyph groupings. Either the chants weren't direct translations, or more likely, the oral tradition had already degraded by the time it was documented. Perhaps the most sobering realization is how much we've lost simply by studying the tablets in isolation. In 2018, archaeologists working at Anegna Beach uncovered a ceremonial plaza where fragments of a tablet were found alongside feasting debris and broken fishhooks. The arrangement suggested the tablet wasn't just read but used, perhaps as part of a ritual where the act of tracing glyphs released their power. This contextual clue is priceless, yet it came too late for the dozens of tablets already removed from such settings and placed under museum glass. We're left with a cruel paradox. The better our tools become, the clearer it is how much irreplaceable knowledge has slipped through time's fingers. What keeps researchers going are the ghosts of possibility. In 2023, a re-examination of the Ichankray tablet using reflectance transformation imaging revealed previously unnoticed subglyphs, tiny marks that may represent vowels or modifiers like diacritics in other scripts. And a controversial but tantalizing study by Chilean computer scientists suggests the script structure shares distant statistical similarities with the undeciphered Proto-Elamite writing of ancient Iran. Are these meaningful connections or mathematical mirages? For now, Rongorongo remains a fortress with its gates ajar. We can peer into the courtyard but not yet cross the threshold. The glyphs wait, patient as the moe, for the day someone rediscovers the key they were made to hold. The mystery of Rongorongo persists not because of a lack of effort, but because it defies the very conditions that unlocked other ancient scripts. Take the Rosetta Stone, the famed slab that cracked Egyptian hieroglyphs wide open. Its power lay in presenting the same text in 3 scripts, including well-understood Greek. Rongorongo has no such gift, no bilingual inscriptions, no colonial edicts carved in both Polynesian and Spanish. It exists in isolation, a linguistic island as remote as the physical one that birthed it. Without this critical bridge, scholars are left peering across a chasm, trying to reconstruct meaning from shadows. Compounding the problem is the brutal cultural rupture caused by slave raids and epidemics. When Jean-François Champollion deciphered hieroglyphs, he worked within a living tradition. Coptic, the descendant of ancient Egyptian, still echoed in churches along the Nile. But Rongorongo's last true readers perished in the 19th century, taking with them the oral keys that animated the script. What survived are fragments, a chant here, a glyph name there, like trying to reassemble a symphony from a few scattered notes. Modern Rapa Nui, reshaped by Tahitian and Spanish influences, is a distant cousin to the language the tablets were carved in. Even if we match symbols to words, we can't be certain we're hearing them as the original scribes intended. Then there's the script's sheer originality. Most deciphered writing systems, Linear B, Mayan glyphs, cuneiform, belong to families with recognizable relatives. Rongorongo emerges as if from nowhere, its structure alien even to other Polynesian symbolic traditions. The reverse boustrophedon technique, where alternate lines flip not just direction but the glyphs themselves, has no parallel in world epigraphy. Some symbols resemble petroglyphs from Hawaii or the Marquesas, but their organization into a coherent writing system appears uniquely Rapa Nui. This isn't just a dialect of a known script, it's a language in wood playing by rules we've yet to fully grasp. Compare this to the decipherment of Linear B in the 1950s. Michael Ventris could lean on familiar frameworks, Greek mythology, Mycenaean archaeology, even the later Cypriot syllabary. Rongorongo offers no such footholds. The few surviving oral traditions describe the script as talking wood, but whether it recorded speech verbatim, served as ritual prompts, or functioned as a complex mnemonic device remains hotly debated. Even statistical analyzers, which confirm its linguistic patterning, can't tell us if a sequence of glyphs spells the king's harvest or prayer to the shark god. The script's possible hybrid nature adds another layer of confusion. Some tablets might be sacred calendars, others genealogies, still others myths, each demanding different decipherment approaches. The Mamre tablet's lunar sequences respond to astronomical analysis, while the Aruku Kurenga's dense glyph clusters resist any obvious classification. This isn't like cracking a single code, it's confronting an entire library where each book follows its own cipher. What makes Rongorongo uniquely stubborn is the absence of mundane records. Most ancient scripts reveal themselves through tax receipts, royal decrees, or shopping lists, the bureaucratic detritus of daily life. But Easter Island's isolation and oral tradition meant writing likely served elite or sacred purposes from the outset. The tablets we have are the philosophical treatises and religious texts of their world, devoid of the repetitive, predictable content that helps linguists triangulate meaning. So where does this leave us? Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs, where the Rosetta Stone provided a grammar and vocabulary cheat sheet, Rongorongo floats in a sea of unknowns. Every proposed decipherment, from Fisher's lunar genealogies to Barthel's syllabic theories, relies on educated guesswork. The script's beauty lies in its defiance. It refuses to conform to old-world decipherment playbooks, challenging us to rethink what writing can be. Until some serendipitous discovery unearths a tablet buried with its translation, or until computational linguistics unlocks patterns our brains can't perceive, Rongorongo may remain what it's always been, a message in a bottle washed up on the shores of history, waiting for someone to speak its language. For the Rapa Nui people today, the Rongorongo script is far more than an archaeological curiosity, it's a heartbeat. Though the glyphs may no longer be fully understood, they pulse with the resilience of a culture that refused to be erased. Walk through Hangaroa, the island's main town, and you'll see the symbols everywhere, tattooed on forearms, painted on murals, even stamped onto protest signs during demonstrations for indigenous rights. The script has become a visual anthem, a way to declare, "We are still here." This transformation from sacred artifact to living emblem is especially poignant when you consider how close Rongorongo came to extinction. After the slave raids and missionary burnings, after centuries of colonial suppression, the fact that these glyphs endure at all is a testament to their power. Young Rapa Nui artists and educators are weaving the script back into daily life in astonishing ways. At the island's only high school, students learn to carve replicas of the glyphs using traditional tools, not as historical reenactment but as a bridge to their ancestors. Local musician Maito Manutamatoma incorporates Rongorongo motifs into song lyrics, treating the symbols as poetic inspiration rather than puzzles to solve. Even the annual Tapoti Festival, a vibrant celebration of Polynesian culture, now features performances where dancers' body paint echoes the flowing lines of the tablets. These aren't attempts to decode the past, they're acts of reclamation, asserting that Rongorongo's meaning isn't locked away in academia but alive in the hands of those who claim it as heritage. The movement goes beyond symbolism. Linguists from the Rapa Nui Language Academy are collaborating with elders to document every surviving fragment of oral tradition that might relate to the script. One breakthrough came when 94-year-old Maria Teresa Hayar recited a childhood lullaby her grandmother sang while pointing to glyph-like shapes drawn in the sand. Though the song's lyrics don't directly translate the symbols, the rhythm and repetition mirror the tablet sequences, suggesting a lost performative layer. Other elders have shared guarded family stories about singing boards, used in childbirth rituals where the act of tracing glyphs was believed to channel ancestral protection. These fragments, painstakingly reassembled, are forming a new kind of understanding, one that prioritizes cultural context over literal translation. Yet this revival isn't without tension. Some traditionalists argue that repurposing Rongorongo for tourism or art risks trivializing its sacred origins. A heated debate erupted when a local brewery used stylized glyphs on beer labels, with Elder Alberto Hotus calling it "wearing your grandfather's funeral cloak to a party." Others counter that cultures evolve, and that breathing new life into the script honors its creators more than leaving it frozen behind glass. The conversation mirrors broader struggles faced by indigenous communities worldwide. How do you revive a tradition without reducing it to a commodity? How do you honor the past while making space for the present? Perhaps the most powerful testament to Rongorongo's enduring significance lies in its role as a diplomatic tool. When Rapa Nui leaders traveled to Santiago in 2019 to demand greater autonomy from Chile, they brought replicas of the tablets as visual proof of their distinct cultural identity. The glyphs, once nearly erased by colonial forces, became negotiators in their own right, silent witnesses to a people's unbroken connection to their land and history. Today, as the island fights over tourism and resource extraction, the script's resurgence offers something vital, a reminder that some voices, even when silenced for centuries, can still find ways to speak. Rongorongo's mystery has proven irresistible to storytellers and conspiracy theorists alike, spinning wild narratives far beyond academic journals. Among the most persistent fringe theories is the claim that the script isn't human at all, that its intricate symbols were gifted by extraterrestrial visitors. Proponents point to Easter Island's isolation and the script's sudden appearance as proof of otherworldly intervention, citing dubious comparisons to alleged alien glyphs in UFO lore. Never mind that Polynesian voyagers crossed thousands of miles of open ocean without cosmic help. The allure of ancient astronauts overshadowing indigenous ingenuity persists. Even more outlandish are the suggestions that Rongorongo encodes advanced astronomical data or maps to hidden Pacific vaults of Atlantean technology. These theories crumble under scrutiny. No tablet contains mathematical precision beyond lunar cycles, and the glyph's statistical structure aligns with human language patterns, not interstellar blueprints. Pop culture amplifies the myths while occasionally nodding to reality. The script inspired a pivotal plot in the video game Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, where Nathan Drake deciphers Rongorongo as a treasure map, a riff on real-life speculation about the tablets recording hidden resources. Less grounded is the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, which bizarrely linked the glyphs to a global ancient astronaut writing system, alongside Norse runes and Sumerian cuneiform. More respectful treatments exist, like the novel The Birdman's Wife, which weaves Rongorongo into a historical fiction about Catherine Routledge's expeditions, capturing the script's cultural weight without sensationalism. Even Star Trek paid homage in an Voyager episode, imagining a futuristic linguist struggling to decode an alien script modeled on Rapa Nui's real-world puzzle. The line between homage and exploitation blurs in commercialization. Tourist shops on Easter Island sell Rongorongo T-shirts with garbled glyphs, while New Age journals misappropriate the symbols as sacred vibration codes for crystal healing. This trivialization stings when contrasted with the Rapa Nui community's efforts to reclaim the script's true legacy, like Puritu Tuki's art project, where he carves traditional glyphs onto surfboards to honor ancestors, not merchandise mysticism. What these portrayals share, from the absurd to the thoughtful, is a recognition of Rongorongo's power as a symbol. Whether framed as alien artifact or ancestral voice, the script's unresolved nature makes it a mirror for our fascinations. The truth, as always, is messier and more magnificent. A writing system born from human brilliance on the world's remotest island, its full story still waiting to be told. Centuries after its creation, the Rongorongo script remains one of history's most captivating linguistic puzzles, a complex writing system without a key, a locked door with the original blueprint lost to time. What makes this mystery so extraordinary isn't just that we can't read it, but that it stands as one of the few undeciphered scripts from a completely isolated culture. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mayan glyphs, which had living linguistic relatives or bilingual inscriptions to guide researchers, Rongorongo emerged and vanished in a bubble, leaving no Rosetta Stone to bridge the gap between those elegant carved symbols and their meaning. This isolation gives Rongorongo a rare duality. On one hand, it's a testament to human ingenuity, proof that writing could blossom independently in the most remote corner of Polynesia, far from the influence of other literate societies. Those precise glyphs weren't borrowed or adapted. They were an original invention, as homegrown as the island's towering moe. Yet this same originality is what keeps the script maddeningly out of reach. Without parallels to other writing systems, without even a complete understanding of the Rapa Nui language as it was spoken when the tablets were carved, every attempt at translation is like trying to reconstruct a symphony from a handful of scattered notes. The enduring fascination with Rongorongo speaks to something deeper than academic curiosity. This isn't just about cracking a code, it's about reclaiming voices silenced by time. Each tablet represents stories untold, histories unrecorded, knowledge that could reshape our understanding of Pacific civilizations. Imagine what we might learn if we could read them. Were they sacred hymns, chronicles of epic voyages, astronomical charts guiding Polynesian navigators? The possibilities are as vast as the ocean surrounding Easter Island itself. Here's where you come in. This isn't a mystery meant to be solved by scholars alone. Maybe you've noticed a pattern in the glyphs that others have missed. Perhaps you have insights about Polynesian culture that could shed new light. Share your theories in the comments. Every perspective brings us closer to unraveling this enigma. For those who want to support the quest more directly, organizations like the Rapa Nui Language Academy and the Easter Island Statue Project are doing groundbreaking work to preserve both the script and the indigenous knowledge surrounding it. And if ancient puzzles like this ignite your curiosity, you're in the right place. Coming up, we'll explore other historical riddles that defy explanation, from the cryptic Voynich manuscript to the lost city of Hilike. Some doors from the past may never fully open, but the thrill is in the trying, in keeping those stories alive. The Rongorongo tablets have guarded their secrets for generations. Who knows, the key to unlocking them might be closer than we think.